Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take dense academic material and, well, we turn it into clear, actionable insight. Today, we are taking a fascinating shortcut into the body's automatic pilot, the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS.
And our mission today is to really get past that simple definition you always hear, the involuntary system. We want to understand how its foundational structure, working with the endocrine system, is the key to maintaining minute-to-minute internal homeostasis.
Right.
I mean, if you want to understand how common medications for your heart, for asthma, even for your bladder work, you absolutely have to understand the ANS.
And that structural difference is really where we have to start, because the ANS is fundamentally different from how we, say, move a muscle. In the voluntary system, it's just one neuron, straight from the brain to the muscle, simple. But the ANS, it always involves a break in the signal path.
Exactly. And that's the fascinating part. The ANS always uses a two-neuron system. You have the preganglionic neuron, which starts in the central nervous system. It travels out and meets up with this cluster of nerve cell bodies called a ganglion.
Okay, so a little relay station.
A relay station, perfect. That ganglion then sends out the postganglionic neuron to the actual organ, the heart, a blood vessel, a gland, whatever it's targeting.
So this two-neuron setup, that's the fundamental reason we can't just block the whole involuntary system easily. You're dealing with a synapse point that just doesn't exist in voluntary muscle control.
Precisely. And this system, it regulates everything we never consciously think about. Your heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, body temp, water balance, digestion, all of it. And it maintains that stability through this constant push and pull of two perfectly opposing branches.
Which brings us straight to the accelerator. Let's dive into the sympathetic nervous system, the SNS. It's famously known as the fight-or-flight response. So what is it really designed to do when you perceive a threat?
It's designed to mobilize everything you could possibly need for immediate high-intensity action. Structurally, we call it the thoracolumbar system.
Thoracolumbar.
Yeah, just because its CNS cells originate specifically in the thoracic and lumbar areas of the spinal cord.
Yeah.
And this structure really dictates its function. It sends out these short preganglionic axons to ganglia that are located right near the spinal cord.
So it's fast.
Very fast. And from there, long postganglionic axons spread out, creating a really widespread systemic response.
And the chemical messengers are where things get really specific for pharmacology. The short preganglionic neurons use acetylcholine, or AKA. But the postganglionic ones, the neurons that actually touch the target cell, they use norepinephrine or epinephrine, NE or epi.
That is the crucial chemical distinction. And because those secondary neurons rely on NE or epi, we call them adrenergic nerves. But there's this vital exception that just amplifies the whole effect system-wide.
Okay.
One of the sympathetic ganglia on each side of the spinal cord has evolved into the adrenal medulla. When it gets stimulated, it completely skips the postganglionic axon part and just dumps NE and epi directly into your bloodstream.
Whoa, so it just floods the entire body.
It floods the body, sustaining that fight-or-flight state. It's why you feel that adrenaline rush for so long.
And that circulating adrenaline is what creates all those overwhelming clinical signs of stress that we all recognize. Let's maybe group them thematically, starting with the cardiovascular system.
Right. So cardiovascular activity just skyrockets. You see an increased heart rate, blood pressure goes up, and blood flow is actively diverted.
Diverted where?
Well, it's diverted away from non-essential areas like your gut and to your skeletal muscles, getting you ready to move. At the same time, your bronchi dilate to increase respiratory efficiency, get maximal oxygen in.
And that really purposeful response extends to your senses and your metabolism too, right?
Absolutely. Your pupils dilate. That's a classic sign. It's a mechanism to improve your vision in low light, helping you see the threat or, the escape route. Metabolically, the body just dumps all its reserves. Glucose is formed really rapidly via glycogenolysis to provide instant energy.
And all the normal maintenance work.
It shuts down.
You mentioned maintenance. So what actually happens to the digestive and excretory systems when the SNS takes over?
They basically grind to a halt. Digestion slows way down clinically. You'd hear decreased bowel sounds. And both your GI and urinary sphincters constrict. They clamp down to prevent any evacuation.
Makes sense.
And what's more, when blood is diverted away from the kidneys, it activates the renin-angiotensin system. And that system's job is to retain salt and water, which further boosts blood volume and blood pressure. It's a crucial defense if you're, say, losing blood.
Okay, so here's where the detail really matters for anyone listening and where we shift from anatomy to selective pharmacology. Since sympathetic postganglionic nerves are adrenergic, They react with specific receptor sites. These are classified into alpha and beta receptors. Why is knowing this classification so fundamental to drug design?
Because it lets us target parts of the response without triggering the entire sympathetic storm. I mean, norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, they're all catecholamines. They're structurally related. The receptors are like different locks, and a drug is the key that can unlock just one specific action.
Let's start with the alpha receptors then. Alpha-1 sounds like it's all about constriction.
It is the clamp.
Yeah.
Alpha-1 receptors are found in blood vessels, and when you stimulate them, you get potent vasoconstriction. That's what raises blood pressure. They also cause pupil dilation in the iris and increase the closure of the internal urinary sphincter. It's all about clamping down.
And alpha-2 is different. You said it's like a safety valve.
It's the modulator, a reflex brake, really. Alpha-2 receptors are located on the presynaptic nerve membranes themselves. So when NE is released, some of it flows back and hits these alpha-2 receptors. And that immediately tells the nerve to decrease its future release of NE. It stops the system from just running away with itself. A perfect negative feedback loop.
Okay, now for the beta receptors. We hear beta-1 and beta-2 talked about all the time with heart and lung medications.
We do. And beta-1 receptors are primarily found in cardiac tissue. So when you stimulate them, you increase myocardial activity, heart rate, contractility. It's the primary cardiac accelerator.
Well, wait a second. If the whole sympathetic system is trying to constrict blood vessels with alpha-1 to raise blood pressure, why does beta-2, which is found in vascular smooth muscle, cause vasodilation? That seems like a contradiction.
That's an excellent critical question, and really highlights why we need these receptor subtypes. While alpha-1 is dominant for systemic blood pressure control, beta-2 is crucial in the skeletal muscles and in the bronchi. So stimulating beta-2 causes the bronchi to dilate. That's the whole principle behind asthma relief meds. And locally, it causes vasodilation in the big muscles you're about to use.
Okay.
So in essence, alpha-1 handles the big systemic pressure increase, while beta-2 makes sure the necessary blood flow is getting to the parts that are actually doing the work.
So beta-2 is key for both breathing easier and getting oxygenated blood to your working muscles.
Exactly. It also increases glycogen breakdown in the muscles and liver for extra energy. And then finally, we have beta-3 receptors. They're in fat tissue, the GI tract, the bladder. They're a bit resistant to a lot of blockers. They increase lipolysis and are now being targeted in certain medications for things like overactive bladder.
That's an extensive activation. It needs a pretty methodical way to shut it down. How does the body clean up that adrenergic signal?
It's a two-part cleanup, really. First, most of the NE is just recycled. It's taken back up by the nerve terminal that released it and gets repackaged for reuse. Second, whatever isn't recycled gets broken down by two key enzymes in the synaptic cleft and the liver, monoamine oxidase, or MAO, and catechol-O-methyltransferase, COMT.
And you said this process is relatively slow.
It's pretty slow, yeah.
Which is why the signal hangs around for a while. It's why that adrenaline rush, that lingering nervousness and high heart rate, feels like it lasts forever. It's just waiting for those enzymes to finish the job.
Precisely. That prolonged response is a feature, not a bug, of the sympathetic nervous system's design.
Okay, so now we hit the brake. If the SNS is the accelerator built for this huge systemic effect, the parasympathetic nervous system, the PNS, is the system for rest and digest. And this opposition is what gives us that fine, nuanced control over homeostasis.
That's exactly right. The PNS is all about conserving and storing energy. Structurally, it just flips the script entirely. We call it the craniosacral system.
Okay.
Because its CNS neurons originate way up in the cranium, dominated by the vagus nerve, and way down in the sacral part of the spinal cord.
And this structural difference is the whole key to its localized function, isn't it?
It is the anatomical basis for its precision. Unlike the SNS, the PNS has long preganglionic axons. And the ganglia, those relay stations, are located very close to or even inside the organ they're affecting. This means the postganglionic axons are super short, which leads to highly localized, precise control, not a systemic flood.
And chemically, it's way simpler.
Much, much simpler. Acetylcholine, ACE, is the neurotransmitter for both the preganglionic and the postganglionic neurons. The entire system is cholinergic.
So the results, the physiological effects, are all about building up reserves and doing routine maintenance.
Exactly. We see a big increase in motility and secretions in the GI tract. That's to promote digestion and absorption. Heart rate and contractility drop to conserve energy. The bronchi constrict a bit. And importantly, all the sphincters relax, both GI and urinary, to allow for evacuation of waste. And the pupils constrict, letting less light into the eye. Everything is calming down.
The nerves using ACE are called cholinergic. And that brings us to their receptor targets, muscarinic and nicotinic. And they're named after plant alkaloids used in early research, right?
That's right. Muscarinic receptors are found mainly in the visceral organs, so the GI tract, bladder, heart, glands. Stimulating them causes pupil constriction, increased GI activity, increased bladder contraction, and fundamentally, the slowing of the heart rate.
And nicotinic receptors. They're the connection point to the somatic system, to muscle control.
That's a critical link. Nicotinic receptors are located in the CNS, the adrenal medulla, all the autonomic ganglia.
Which is why drugs that hit them can be so nonspecific.
Very nonspecific. And crucially, at the neuromuscular junction, stimulating them causes skeletal muscle contractions. And because they're also in the ganglia, hitting them can also trigger signs of a stress reaction.
Okay, finally, termination. How does the body shut down the cholinergic signal? This process is legendary for its speed.
It is an immediate surgical strike. Acetylcholine is destroyed almost instantly. We're talking like 11,000 of a second by an enzyme called acetylcholinesterase, or ACE. This rapid destruction just inactivates the compound, clears the synapse, and makes the receptor instantly ready for the next precise stimulation.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We've laid out the chemical and structural warfare between these two opposing teams. You've got the systemic slow-to-fade SNS, that's NEN, epi, adrenergic, and the localized, instantly terminated PNS, that's ACH, cholinergic.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this understanding of the receptor subtypes, alpha-1 versus beta-2, muscarinic versus nicotinic, that is the foundation of modern pharmacology. It allows medical interventions to target a specific problem, like using a beta-2 agonist drug to dilate the lungs without, overtaxing the heart's beta-1 receptors.
It's the difference between using a sniper rifle and a shotgun in medicine.
And this raises one last important question, something for you to mull over. The SNS uses two slow enzymes, MAO and COMT, plus that reuptake system, which allows the high-alert stress reaction to linger. But the PNS uses just one enzyme, ACE, that destroys the signal instantly. Why might the body need the rest and digest response to be terminated almost instantly, while the fight-or-flight response is allowed to dissipate over a much longer period? It really highlights the body's priorities, the relative importance of rapid, fine-tuned adaptation versus sustained, all-out mobilization.